Chapter 6, World of Titles. Yawning loudly, Tsukasa is having breakfast with the others while Natsumi and Yusuke eye fascinated at what he was wearing. Tsukasa was now wearing a uniform resembling a restaurant worker. "Welcome to the world of Blade," Dragonic announces proudly while eating his breakfast rice bowl with chopsticks. Natsumi sighs, somewhat relieved to be in another world after what she was told in the past world. "I'm still so confused what just happened in the other world," she mutters, still puzzled what even happened. Dragonic smiles at her cute confusion and tells her, "You'll get used to it." Natsumi sweat drops, not sure. She eyes Tsukasa drinking his coffee pretty relaxed and asks him, "So where are we going first?" He eyes her and responds as he puts down his mug, "Bored. Guess I'm a chef in this world." Natsumi reaches for the card work pass and corrects him, giggling. "Chief waiter, Tsukasa-kun." "Same thing, Natsumi-kan," Tsukasa comments with an annoyed expression. He grabs a toast and heads off. Natsumi sighs, following him, as does Yusuke. Dragonic smirks, flying after them with Absol following. Suddenly they hear the cries of a monster that spook Natsumi, hiding behind Tsukasa's back. "Was that?" Yusuke begins to ask, but Tsukasa beats him to it, explaining, "Right away, a monster, lovely timing." He cracks his hands, smirking as he says, "I got this, Yusuke. More like you enjoy this." Yusuke mutters, sweat dropping. Tsukasa just smirks while replying, "Maybe." He mounts on his bike and rides off. Dragonic smirks as he tells the two, "That and I told Tsukasa to test out each new rider and the powers they have. You know, strategy and using his head." Natsumi smiles a bit, worrying about that. Dragonic taps his hat and flies to check up on him. Tsukasa rides on his bike and spots the undead engaging someone. "Bingo," he mutters with a sly smirk, stopping on his bike. He approaches by foot stealthily. He watches as Kamen Rider Garen fights an undead and struggles. Then soon comes down running is someone, charging in as he straps on the blade buckle. "Henshin," the young man shouts, flipping the belt's buckle as it announces, "Turn up." A large blue screen with a bug-like image in the middle manifests as he runs into it and transforms into Kamen Rider Blade, swinging his sword at the undead's back. The two riders fight the monster, who starts overpowering them with ease. Tsukasa crosses his arms, muttering to himself, "Amateurs." He pulls and straps on the Decadriver as he approaches the fight. He pulls and taps on the Decade card, shouting as he begins running, "Henshin." He slides the card into the card inserter of his belt. "Kamen Ride," the Decadriver announces as Tsukasa slides the handles forward as the belt glows and transforms him into Decade. Decade. Leaping into action, Decade kicks the undead back hard, surprising the other two riders. The monster growls, getting up as it is suddenly punched back by Decade, who then questions the monster in a casual nature. "Are you Kamada?" The undead does not reply and instead comes at Decade, who smacks him instantly backwards. "Wrong undead then," Decade says, pulling out the Ryuki Kamen Ride card. He eyes it before proclaiming as he slides it into the belt, "Shinji, I'll borrow your strength." "Kamen Ride," the Decadriver announces as the card is inside of it, with Decade pushing the handles, triggering its power. "Ryuki." Decade soon transforms into Kamen Rider Ryuki, to the other two riders' surprise. Dragonic watches over the sky, wanting to see what Tsukasa learned from the last world. Decade Ryuki comes at the undead, further punching it. The monster comes at him, but Decade suddenly enters into a reflection as the undead hits itself on a wall instead. It staggers, not seeing the rider until Decade Ryuki re-emerges and kicks it backwards. Over here, Decade Ryuki proceeds to zigzag within the many different reflections, entering the mirror world and coming back in and out of it while assaulting the undead with unseen quick strikes before thrusting the monster into a window, shattering on impact. 13 years bad luck. Decade Ryuki taunts the undead, who gets up and comes charging angrier. Pulling out a card, he tosses it into the Deca driver and pushes the handles. Attack Ride. The Deca driver declares as Decade manifests Ryuki's shields. Guard Vent. He blocks the and even tosses the undead right over him onto its back. Tossing another card into the belt. He pushes the handles. Attack Ride. The belt proclaims as Decade Ryuki discards the shields to gain Ryuki's sword. Sword Vent. He comes at the undead swinging multiple slashes across the monster, sparks flying out as it yells in agony. Scoffing at how bored this is, Decade Ryuki taps on the final Attack Ride card. Let's finish this, he declares, tossing it into the Deca driver and takes a fighting, charging pose. Final Attack Ride. The Deca driver announces as the Drag Raider manifests and flies in circles around Decade Ryuki. He then leaps upward as the dragon still flies around it before the rider comes down at the undead with the mirror monster dragon unleashing a fireball at Decade's back, consuming the rider in flames. Ryuki. The fiery rider kick strikes through the undead and it explodes, falling and dropping on its back. Garen sees his chance and tosses a rouse card on the undead, sealing it within the card. Decade Ryuki wipes his hands before reverting back to Tsukasa with a cocky smirk on his face. He hums at the idea that forming a battle strategy wouldn't hurt. He should thank Dragonic that every world will have its own mirror world or another monster-like world for certain rider forms to abuse for huge advantage. Though it does get him to think. How old is Dragonic? He's been battling longer than him and has never stepped past his bounds to fight all enemies, letting Tsukasa to fight and learn. Why? You. Questions to ask another time as Tsukasa turns to face Garen, changing into a male human. You're a rider I never seen before. The man begins to say, completely unaware who this man was. Tsukasa raises an eyebrow, slightly curious if Narutaki even came to this world. If so, why not spread those rumors about him being a devil? What's your rank? The man then demands, spotting the board worker pass. Tsukasa points his finger at him, telling him with a small smirk. An ace, obviously. But then he suddenly takes it back. No, even higher. Tsukasa places his hand under his chin, then adds with a cocky smile. I'm a super royal ace. Dragonic suddenly descends and lands on Tsukasa's head. Oh, I like that. No, wait. The dragon begins to agree but takes it back, thinking for a moment before saying with a grin. Great Royal King Ace. Tsukasa hums with his arms crossed. I like that, he answers with a smirk. Dragonic grins as Tsukasa was going to suggest another name until they are interrupted by Blade, who reverts out of his transformation. No. He points and grabs the worker pass, showing his status, revealing it. He's a 2 of spades. Lowest rank. Dragonic lets out a growl, wanting to play along more with that title. This startles the young man, backing away from them. And you are? Tsukasa questions with a narrow glare. The young man eyes him back and declares, pointing at himself with his right thumb. A real rider. Tsukasa glares, irritated by such a dumb respond. Come on, Sakuya-san, the young man told his comrade as the two walked away. Tsukasa watches with Dragonic as Natsumi and Yusuke come out from where they were watching with Absol. Best we follow them. Natsumi suggests, thinking it would be best to learn more of this world. Tsukasa doesn't need to say anything as he gets back on his bike. Natsumi groans, following him. The group arrives at the large board building, seeing many people working and doing their jobs. It seems this board handles undead, which means we'll eventually confront Kamada here. Tsukasa comments with a firm face, knowing how dangerous that former human is with his brethren. Dragonic looks around, rather disappointed that the board of this world is basically a company more than a task force to fight and seal undead. In the true world of Blade, board was just an organization studying and trying to seal the undead. Well, half true. The purple dragon explains, really disappointed. Yusuke blinks, wondering about the half-true part. Now in this world it's more corporate. Tsukasa points out, seeing everyone doing their obligated positions. Dragonic agrees, adding, "This is the saddest thing I look at." Natsumi sweat drops how similar those two are for different species after all. The group then comes across a large four-sided large structure chart having the name and photo of the people in some kind of ranking system in their positions in the company. Looks like some kind of organization chart? Natsumi asks with Tsukasa pointing out scoffing. More like a class ranking system of who are the top tiers and who's the bottom trash. Kinda feels wrong, right? Yusuke asks. Finding this to be so inhuman and more towards personal gain than to work hard like any normal person. Natsumi then spots and recognizes the two riders they saw on the top of the charts. I guess the best workers are common riders. She mutters, finding it really weird. Heroes shouldn't be treated like any worker, they're the good guys. Tsukasa smirks at the idea, imagining a common rider that is an office worker making sales calls. In a way, Natsumi-kan. To give it a name. Tsukasa begins to say, waving his arm to the side giving that idea a name. Common rider salaryman. Natsumi sweat drops with Yusuke speaking up. You don't need to name it. Single quote ellipsis. I like the name. Dragonic, however, speaks up with a grin. Tsukasa grins back. Natsumi sweat drops smiling that those two are pretty much alike. Suddenly someone bumps on Tsukasa's back. He staggers as a voice calls out upset. Hey! Watch where you're standing. Tsukasa and the others turn to see the same guy who's the blade of this world. You again. Tsukasa comments, upset. The young man recalls him and just smirks. Greeting himself. Sorry about that. I'm Kazuma, ace and common rider blade. Of course you are. Tsukasa just says very unimpressed. Natsumi eyes him, sighing that Tsukasa can be very uncaring. She then asks Kazuma, being friendly. So you fight the undead, right? Yep, that's my job and I'm good at it. Kazuma answers her smiling. Natsumi nods, eyeing the chart and asks him, curious. Must be for the money. Kazuma felt a bit embarrassed to admit it though he tries explaining. Well yay. I earn a lot but also I don't want any undead to harm anyone. Tsukasa didn't comment on that naive nature. Kazuma checks his watch and panics proclaiming, I should go now. So long. Cheese. He heads off leaving the group stunned by what he just called Tsukasa. Single quote ellipsis. Did he just call you cheese? Yusuke questions out loud, really baffling. Tsukasa, grunting calmly, just ignores ever hearing that and walks off to where the restaurant was at. They arrive at the restaurant part of the company and immediately the receptionist of the restaurant informs Tsukasa that the president wishes to see him. Oh? The boss wants to see a low-rank member of his company? Tsukasa taunts with an amusing smirk. Absol groans, eyeing the breakfast-setting table and she licks her lips seeing the many foods. Especially the fruit. Absol, she barks pointing at the table with her snout. Tsukasa nods and orders the other workers. Feed my mutt. Dog food though. Absol widens her eyes and growls before crunch. Tsukasa gasps with a face of agony. He looks down in pain to see Absol biting his leg. He groans as he instead orders them. Give her whatever. Absol releases her mouth grip, grinning. Tsukasa glares madly as he limps away to the elevator. He arrives at the top floor as he comes across the riders from before and someone sitting on the president desk. There the man greets Tsukasa, introducing himself to be the president of board, Hajime. Tsukasa eyes him pretty confident though confused that they don't have a clue who he is. He expected Narutaki to spread the nonsense that he's a devil here already. Hajime then praises Tsukasa's work in being a rider of another world and since he already works in the company, he also wishes to promote him. Tsukasa hums at this and nods though he does accept but under one condition. I'll accept but I want to be head chef. Of course. Hajime accepts, shaking his hand. Tsukasa smirks, slightly surprised at how well this turned out. From there, The president then lectures the other riders for their failure in not dealing with both undead and more towards Kazuma disobeying orders of going after it and instead assisting Garen. Kazuma, because of you disobeying previously orders of not engaging the other undead you were tasked with, you will demoted. Hajime informs him, demoting his position. Kazuma is left stunned, protesting, but the president ignores his request and orders Sakuya, and call Mutsuki over. He will be promoted to ace and will become the next rider. Lingle. He nods, leaving Kazuma in distress. Tsukasa-san, you'll be charge of Kazuma under kitchen duty. Hajime informs his new rider. Tsukasa eyes Kazuma and smirks, replying, "Sure thing, boss." Kazuma gulps, having a bad feeling about this. Sure enough, Kazuma is forced into kitchen duty and forced to look the part too. However, he's bad at cooking and complains about his current situation. This is unfair. Why the hell am I working here? Kazuma complains louder, with Tsukasa watching this and asks with a smug smirk, "Bother by this?" Kazuma turns, eyeing him. Tells him angrily, "How am I supposed to do my job as rider if I'm peeling potatoes?" Tsukasa hums, checking the uneven peeled potatoes. "You're right," he comments, agreeing as he then orders him, "You're peeling onions now." Kazuma staggers, speechless, with Tsukasa giving him a firm face. Dragonic suddenly lands on his shoulder and states with a stern look, "And stop complaining. Work is work." He just didn't say a thing when getting to work. Dragonic smirks, turning to Tsukasa, and he asks him with a grin, "So I'm your second in command?" Tsukasa hums, stopping to see Natsumi and Yusuke staring at him. He smirks, responding, "Better you than Yusuke." Yusuke sweat drops. Natsumi then asks, concerned, "Don't you think this is all weird? I'm enjoying the moment, but yes." Tsukasa partly agrees, knowing this whole mystery about President Hajime is off. Why make someone he's never met before get this much of a privilege while degrading a rider who works under him? It's almost like he thinks he's God, controlling people through titles and statuses rather than treating them as humans. Still, Tsukasa is missing a piece to solve this case, so right now he'll have to wait. He eyes Natsumi, humming before asking her, "Anyway, Natsumi-kan, want to work here?" Natsumi staggers, blushing, asking curiously, "Do I get paid a lot?" Dragonic nods, grinning as he pulls out a sexy, mini-skirted maid's outfit. Natsumi's face becomes stunned by embarrassment while Tsukasa whistles. Dragonic blushes, almost perverted, as he states, covering his face with his fedora, "And you get to wear this adorable maid's outfit, pass." Natsumi yells out, blushing bright red, refusing to ever wear that. Single quote ellipsis. "Shame," both Dragonic and Tsukasa mutter. Yusuke sweat drops heavily, not believing those two, with Absol whining, oddly liking the outfit. Kazuma grunts, hating his time working in the kitchen, more that he has to peel onions. Tsukasa approaches him to see him lazing off. He grabs and holds up an onion at Kazuma, not even saying it but simply showing him to get back to work. He grunts, grabbing the onion to peel it. Dragonic then ducks more onions on the bowl, ordering him, "Get back to work." Kazuma grunts more, getting to work as he is visited by the other riders and they taunt him, being mocked by his former teammates, and then ordered to meet the president to be demoted as well as hand over the blade buckle. This caused Kazuma to run out of the company and chase after the undead that got away. The kid is being reckless, doing it without thinking twice about it. Dragonic comments, with Tsukasa agreeing. He eyes Natsumi and Yusuke and tells them with a small smirk, "I got this. Be back soon." He leaves with Dragonic, heading down to chase Kazuma until Tsukasa is pumped by someone who didn't see him coming. Tsukasa drops backwards, grunting, eyeing the person who also fell on his back too. "My bad. Didn't see you there." The brown-haired young man with hair near over his shoulders apologizes, laughing nervously as he did. Tsukasa gazes at this individual as the two get up. "You lost?" Tsukasa questions him. The other man blinks extremely confused, thinking for a moment before answering awkwardly. Why yay, a little. Could you help please? Tsukasa raises an eyebrow before telling him, pointing to the receptionist. Ask information, they might help you. He lets an ah before thanking him kindly. Thank you, Tsukasa. It's where the young man freezes up with Tsukasa staring at him raising an eyebrow again. The young man utters way too nervous that he screws that up. Single quote ellipsis single quote. Silent. Tsukasa checks his watch and rolls his eyes, not having the time to deal with another rider, and tells this idiot, I don't have time for this right now. Good luck with whatever. Tsukasa runs outside to mount his bike to catch up to another idiot. The young man just stares with a half-open mouth and nods, not expecting that's Decade. Tsukasa looks around on his bike and stops to spot Kazuma's bike. He gets off and searches on foot, finally finding the idiot looking around frustrated. He scoffs, calling out to him. You know, someone taunted me about how he cared more about protecting people than the job. Kazuma startles, turning to see him. Cheese? He mutters out of surprise that he found him only for Tsukasa to correct him, annoyed. Chief. He laughs a bit nervously before becoming serious and tells his reasons. I need to find that undead. If I do, then I can get back what was taken. Tsukasa already figured as much, though he does ask him almost uncaringly. Would that make you a better person? Kazuma blinks, not following that. Tsukasa eyes him as he explains it as simply as he could put it. Doing what's right comes from not one's own image or self-interest, but what one truly wants to do. Kazuma startles slightly, slowly getting that he is trying to regain his pose more than why he became a rider. Tsukasa then hums, thinking about the image part of his advice, and corrects himself partly. Then again, I love my own image, so do what you think is right, Kazuma. Kazuma looks down, not thinking how careless he was. He tries to apologize, but then a voice speaks up. So you've come to stop me again, boy. Tsukasa turns and stares at Kamada, finally appearing. He smirks, responding in a mocking tone. I was just wondering when we would cross paths. Sub-editor Murderer San. You ruined my plans in my world, but now you will pay greatly. The old man responds coldly for what Decade did to his plans, and now he will suffer. He lets out a shout, transforming into his Paradoxa undead form. Tsukasa smirks at his crazy logic and calls him off as he taps on the Decade card. I wonder about that. Henshin. He slides it into the now attached Decadriver, pushing the handles before wiping his hands. Kamen ride. Decade. The Decadriver announces as Tsukasa wipes his hands and transforms into Decade. Decade comes at the undead, the two engaging in combat. Paradoxa shouts, charging at Decade, rolls or evades his attacks with ease, only making the once man now undead matter. Damn you. What? We're just warming up, Decade replies, pulling out the ride booker in its sword form and slashes him down as sparks fly out. Dragonic watches from above, observing. Kazuma watches amazed but snaps out as this is the chance he's been looking for. This is my chance, he declares, strapping on the blade buckle on his waist and shouts, flipping the center. Henshin, turn up, the blade buckle announces as Kazuma charges, transforming into Blade and slashing the undead on the back. Decade scoffs, wiping the backside of his sword as he joins him, slashing the monster. Decade then dunks a card into the Decadriver as it declares, Attack ride, slash. Blade swipes two cards from his sword as his Blade Rouser announces, Thunder, slash. Both riders swing their weapons, releasing their long-range attacks that hit the undead, sending it flying backwards hard. Blade got a bit excited by them winning, with Decade sighing that he still hasn't learned anything. Kazuma. Blade turns to see Garen with Lingle approaching him, both ready to take him in for disobeying board's orders. Blade had a feeling this would happen, so he tells them, solemn in his voice, I'll return the buckle after the fight. Garen didn't say a word at first. Lingal is about to protest the idea but Garen accepts. Lingal sighs but agrees. Blade nods as the three riders join with Decade, striking the undead with their weapons and rosin card attacks. The Paradoxa undead rolls away in sparks, grunting in pain, refusing to let this end. Decade scoffs, gazing at Blade, and actually praises the idiot's mistake. Good to know you're. Before he could finish himself, an energy slash comes out of nowhere and strikes all four riders, sending them back. The riders are taken back as they watch as the black, heart-shaped chest rider, Chalice, has appeared wielding his double-ended blade. Decade chuckles at this, pointing at the new enemy, proclaiming, "Kamen Rider Chalice, huh? I was wondering about when he'll show up." Chalice does not answer. He moves rapidly at Blade, slashing him down over and over with sparks flying out from his double-ended blade. Blade gasps out, yelling, "GAA!" Chalice soon performs an electrical energy slash right across Blade, exploding on impact. "Kazuma!" Decade shouts as he slashes back the Paradoxa undead, engaging him. The blade buckle flies off, canceling the transformation as Kazuma falls on his back in agony. Chalice picks up the belt and now stares at Decade. "You're next," he proclaims, pointing his weapon at the magenta-colored rider. Decade snickers a bit at that and responds back, pointing his sword at him. "Oh, try it." Chalice puts the belt away as he comes charging at Decade, who charges back hard. They clash sword versus double-bladed weapon, sparks flying, trying to overpower the other as they evade the other's swings. That was until the Paradoxa undead joins in with the other undead. All three engage Decade, but he dodges around their strikes with ease. Watching the fight, Narutaki observes, upset that Decade is still alive. That Kamada is useless even when he has more of an advantage. "Damn Decade, he won't live this time," Narutaki vows as he creates an aurora curtain over Decade. From it, Kamen Rider Todoroki suddenly appears, kicking Decade back. Decade is pushed back as the new rider declares, rather excited, "Sup, mind if I join in?" He starts playing his guitar-like weapon, releasing echoing electricity. Decade gets up, rolling away from the attack. He brushes off the dirt off his shoulder as he pulls out a rider card. "Go right ahead. The more the merrier." He responds by tapping on the card twice before dunking it into the Decadriver. "Kamen Ride." The belt announces as Decade pushes the handles together as he transforms into Kiva. "Kiva." Decade Kiva, tossing another rider card as he becomes Kiva Garuru form. Comes charging at all four enemies with both swords at hand. Decade, in his Kiva form, confronts not just Chalice but two undead and even the summoned Kamen Rider Todoroki. Was it Narutaki's doing too? He parries and slashes down against the four enemies as Todoroki swings his guitar-like sword at his back. Decade Kiva doesn't dodge as he moves his right sword arm to his back and blocks the backslash before twirling fast and swift kicks Todoroki backwards. Chalice and Paradoxa undead come at Decade Kiva, but he leaps backwards and hops on the other undead as he pulls out the final attack ride card. He lands in front of all four, sliding the card into the Decadriver. Final attack ride. The Decadriver proclaims as Decade pushes the handles and gets in a jumping pose. The chains wrapped around the right leg break apart as the red bat legs emerge. Decade Kiva then leaps up and comes down at the enemies with a double thrusting kick. Kiva. Both riders and the Paradoxa undead dodge it fast except the other undead as Decade Kiva hits him onto the ground and explodes, leaving the Kiva logo like a crater. The undead was destroyed completely, but the enemies have escaped. Decade Kiva looks around as he reverts back to normal Decade, not seeing Chalice, Kamada or Todoroki. He reverts back to normal as Tsukasa comments annoyedly, wiping his hands together. TCH. Just when things were getting interesting. He turns to see the Garen rider having his belt taken too. Decade reverts back with Tsukasa thinking, puzzled. Why would Chalice take both rider belts? And how did they know where they were? For losing the Garen belt. President Hajime demoted its rider and was about to fire Kazuma, but Tsukasa demanded he remain in the restaurant, still needing help. Not at all happy for screwing up, Kazuma blames his actions, with Yusuke trying to not give up. Even Tsukasa told Kazuma if he still desired to become Blade, then he won't accept him leaving without a fight and he should work in the kitchen. You would go that far for me? Kazuma asks, taken back that he would do this for him. Yusuke turns, eyeing Tsukasa, and asks him if he is. Right? Dragonic eyes Tsukasa, who look a bit stunned. He slowly turns around, responding slightly confident. Why yeah, that's right. Taking a moment to breathe, he resumes. Since you're my subordinate, sometimes I need to say things that are cold and piercing. Kazuma just stares at him and smiles brightly. Nice one, Dragonic whispers to his ear with a smirk. Tsukasa just groans hesitantly before telling Kazuma, just get back to work. Yes, sir, Kazuma responds, not going to let him down. Kazuma has gotten better in his current position, however that would change when he heard that both Sakuya and Mutsuki had resigned from board and the president is currently not in the company. It's not like them to resign. Kazuma protests, knowing that they would not leave. He eyes Tsukasa, asking him, I need to find them. Tsukasa doesn't answer at first. He turns his back to him. Dragonic watches as he finally answers Kazuma's request. Single quote ellipsis. Take Yusuke with you and find your friends. This surprised him, slowly smiling, telling him, Cheese. It's freaking Chief. Dragonic roars, irritated by his speech mistake. Tsukasa nods, firmly agreeing with the dragon. Kazuma nods nervously before bowing down and thanks them. Thank you. Kazuma heads off in a hurry. Tsukasa watches him leave as Natsumi overhears that and smiles, praising him. That was very mature from you, Tsukasa-kun. Tsukasa eyes her. Not so sure about that. Then again, he doesn't care. But what he does is what is going on. Going to wear the maid outfit now? Dragonic asks in a teasing grin. Natsumi groans uneasily, refusing to wear it, but before she could protest, Tsukasa starts walking to the two's surprise. Tsukasa-kun? Natsumi mutters, calling him, but Tsukasa eyes her and just waves his hand to her to follow him. She blinks as she and Dragonic along with Absol follow him, properly entering the president office through illegal methods like busting the door open. Tsukasa sits on the president chair looking through its drawers. Natsumi groans, asking him of concern. Being the lookout, you sure we should be here? Tsukasa doesn't answer until he finds something interesting, pulling out a few papers behind a locked drawer which he blasts through with the ride Booker's gun form. Natsumi sweat drops, hoping they don't get arrested for that. He reads it and forms a small smirk as it reads on the report on a stolen fourth belt that board uncovered but can't find. No doubt who stole it. Plus another report on missing captured undead cards. Now I get the gist of who our enemy is. Tsukasa tells himself as he stands up and walks out. Natsumi blinks, catching up to him, asking, You do? He nods, about to explain it until they were intercepted by the head maid, informing Tsukasa that everyone is enjoying today's menus. Tsukasa smirks, not at all surprised, saying out loud, Of course, I am perfect. Natsumi, Dragonic and Absol sweat drop at his egoist nature. However, the maid also informed him that one was extremely disappointed with the meals. This shocked Tsukasa, slowly making a disgusted face. Excuse me? Natsumi stares in surprise, never seeing Tsukasa's ego just crumble like that. She watches him marching to where the maid was pointing to this said customer. He approaches the male at the end corner of the restaurant near the windows. Tsukasa looks down at the many plates and only samples them like they were not worth being eaten. Natsumi peeks behind his back, also surprised this person barely ate any of the goods. Heard you didn't like my food? Tsukasa questions him at first politely. The man doesn't answer, taking a bite on a plate of curry, and after that single bite pushes the plate back. This pissed Tsukasa as he now asks in a threatening tone. Any particular reason before I kick you out? The young man with spiky downward black hair forms a smirk and finally responds. Lack of sea cucumber. Tsukasa is left silent by those few words. How? How does he know? Sea cucumber? Natsumi mutters puzzled. Tsukasa just glares annoyed. Especially since he likes sea cucumbers and no one but his dead parents, his former butler and Seo know his love for sea cucumbers. Do you think of me as a fool? Tsukasa calls out this stranger annoyed. The man looks up at him and responds with causality. Hardly but seriously. You still haven't eaten a sea cucumber in how long haven't you, Tsukasa-san? Tsukasa slowly widens his eyes, still remaining calm, immediately questioning him with a serious face. Who the hell are you? The man points his finger at Tsukasa, introducing himself with a smirk and saluting with a finger gun hand gesture. Daiki Kato. And it's not the first we've met, Tsukasa-san. The stranger Kato pulls out a familiar brown hat as he puts it on. Immediately Tsukasa recognizes the hat. The same one, that same guy. It then hits him. You. Tsukasa utters out, knowing exactly who this is, while Natsumi just blinks, even more clueless. However, before the conversation could continue, a tap on glass is heard. Tsukasa pauses, turning to see Dragonic tapping on the glass. Tsukasa. The dragon calls out from the other side. Looking for an open window, but they are all shut. He grunts, just telling him on the other side. Yusuke and your subordinate are in trouble. Tsukasa scoffs, having a feeling as much. Kato sighs as he stands up and tells him, waving goodbye though smiling. Another time then, Tsukasa-san. Tsukasa gazes at him walking away. He stares seriously, not liking that guy, before facing Natsumi and tells her with a small smirk. Natsumi-kan, I'll be back. He then runs off with Natsumi blinking rapidly. Hey, I'm coming too. Natsumi shouts, running after him with Absol right behind her. Tsukasa gets on his bike with sadly Natsumi mount behind him. He sighs, wishing she just listened, as he has no idea who might just then multiple blasts hit around the bike. Natsumi screams in panic as Tsukasa stops on his tracks. He looks forward and sees who did that. It was Kamen Rider Todoroki, again getting in his way. You again? Tsukasa asks to see this pest again. Todoroki snickers, swinging his weapon. Calling him out. I was told to get rid of you and I got a job to finish. Natsumi gulps as the enemy charges at them, swinging his weapon. Tsukasa pushes himself and Natsumi out of his way, but he does manage to cut through Natsumi's yellow beanie. My beanie, she yells as it falls in half. She rubs her head and sighs as she seems okay. Tsukasa rolls his eyes as he wasn't a fan of the beanie, preferring Natsumi's hair not covered up. Relax, you look better now. Tsukasa tells her, causing Natsumi to blush reddish. Todoroki charges at them again, but this time gets intercepted by Absol using Night Slash, pushing him back. Tsukasa-kun, we don't have time. Yusuke and Kazuma. Dragonic begins telling Tsukasa, who knew that strapping on the Decadriver, proclaiming, easier said than done. Before Tsukasa transforms, Todoroki is suddenly attacked by the appearance of the Drag Raider, merging out the mirror as it breathes fireballs. The rider rolls away, dodging the flames before one hits him and he's sent back. Natsumi startles heavily, her legs still shaking with Dragonic's surprise. Tsukasa just stares calmly as someone calls out to him. You alright? He turns and startles to see it was the same guy he bumped into before. You. Tsukasa mutters, watching as the mirror monster flies back into the mirror. The young man walks up past Tsukasa, telling him as he faces the enemy rider. I got this, Tsukasa. You go help your friends. Tsukasa didn't need to question who this could be, just stating it. You're another rider then. The young man chuckles kindly, introducing himself. Shinji Kido, friend to all riders. Shinji? Then, Tsukasa mutters, now realizing who he was. The young man Shinji then pulls out an advent box, the Ryuki advent box. I don't know if you're really a destroyer, Tsukasa-san, but I know you're a good guy willing to help any rider out. And I don't like fighting other riders, but... Shinji begins to say, not happy to fight Todoroki as he is another rider, but he holds up the box to the reflection of the mirror as the V-buckle belt manifests around his waist. I'll do my best to help you out. Henshin, Shinji declares, sliding the advent box into the main slot, and he transforms into Kamen Rider Ryuki. Natsumi gasps amazed as Dragonic smirks. Alright, I got this. Ryuki promises, lifting up his right fist as he comes at Todoroki, engaging him in battle. Tsukasa watches as he could tell that Ryuki is stronger but holds himself back from not hurting the enemy rider. Ryuki manages to kick Todoroki back as he pulls out an advent card from the box and slides it into the dragon-like gauntlet. Strike Vent. The gauntlet speaks out as it transforms to resemble Dragredder's head appearing on left arm. He takes aim and unleashes fireballs at the enemy rider, blasting him back as he yells, "Awesome!" Natsumi mutters out astonished as Absol nods. Tsukasa has seen enough, turning to face her and orders her, "Natsumi-kan." Natsumi eyes him and nods. Aware he wants her to go back to the studio and be safe. She responds, wishing him luck. "I know, and come back safe, Tsukasa-kun." Tsukasa, slightly smiling, pulls out the decade card. Only one way to reach that idiot Kazuma. Hopefully he's not too late as he transforms into Decade. Kazuma was in a pinch as he's being beaten by none other than the Joker Undead. Him and Yusuke found his teammates entrapped and learned that Chalice was President Hajime, waiting for the energy build-up from the riders to become Joker. Now he's fighting him alone, with Yusuke freeing the others and not doing well, wishing he grabbed his belt when he had the chance. Joker Hajime chuckles, approaching the beaten Kazuma for the finishing until he's stopped by Tsukasa as Decade Ryuki appears out of the reflection of a window to sucker punch the Joker Undead away from Kazuma. Wiping his hands, Decade Ryuki comments on the idiot he's protecting. "Really, Kazuma, do I have to do everything? Jeez." Kazuma yells out, smiling, that he came to save him. Decade Ryuki didn't bother correcting him facing the Joker Undead. He gives him a finger point and calls the monster out, aware who it is. "President Hajime, I like your new look." This surprised the human that became undead, uttering out, "How did you?" chuckling at his surprise. Tsukasa had time to reach Yusuke, who was freeing Kazuma's friends who were captured by Chalice, who was really Hajime, which Tsukasa already figured out in the plan of using the belts and the undead cards to become the Joker Undead. Only idiots would not notice their own boss is the one behind all of this, and I saw through it and play along it. Decade Ryuki declares, pointing his finger at Joker Hajime. This enraged the undead, engaging Decade, showing the power of the Joker Undead. Decade Ryuki dodges around the energy attacks, using the reflections around him to enter in and out of the mirror world while also attacking back with unseen strikes. This frustrates Joker Hajime, demanding angrily, "Who the hell are you?" Decade Ryuki reappears and kicks him back. He doesn't bother telling him as he instead pulls out the blade buckle. "This is a present from me," Decade tells Kazuma, who smiles of joy. "Cheese. That's Chief, moron." Dragonic growls sitting on Decade Ryuki's head. Decade prepares to toss the belt to Kazuma, but Joker Hajime has enough, raising his hand at Kazuma. "You're getting under my nerves. You're fire," he shouts, firing a powerful green energy blast. Decade Ryuki could react to this but not be able to do much as he intercepts the attack meant for Kazuma and gets hit. He yells as sparks fly out as the transformation is undone as Tsukasa kneels down. Kazuma panics, running to his aid, but Dragonic stops him flying near him. Tsukasa, though, brushes off the damage off his shoulder, getting back up. Hajime Joker then starts laughing as he states that Rider and Undead will work together under his rule with no objections. Don't make me laugh. Tsukasa, however, calls out his stupid nonsense logic. Money and prestige have dazzled your eyes. You nouveau riche bastard. Then what are you? Joker Hajime questions him while still amused. Tsukasa smirks at that weak question and responds honestly. I'm just a human who can discard my prestige and titles for my sense of freedom. Joker growls, beginning to say that all riders are board's tools, thus his tools. Working for a higher rank and larger payment. Wrong. Tsukasa once more protests as he then turns gazing at the idiot Kazuma. He declares as he points at Kazuma, at the very least, this man works. Not for money. Not for raising his rank and especially not to beat down his comrades in an employee survival race. Then for what? Joker Hajime protests, seeing no value in such a simple-minded ideal until Tsukasa proclaims strongly, evolution. Fail or succeed, the comrades he works with support and help each other. They evolve together. That's why he works. Kazuma hears this taken back, not realizing it back then. He's not wrong and he was a fool to let his title as Rider mess with his sense of morals to protect others. This enraged the undead, demanding angrily, just, who are you? Tsukasa smirks and answers him, pointing his finger at him. Just a passing through common rider. Remember that. Tsukasa tosses the blade buckle back to Kazuma, who catches it, smiling to have it back. Let's settle this, Kazuma, Tsukasa declares, pulling out the decade card. Kazuma nods, standing beside him, strapping on the belt around his waist. Right. Tsukasa taps the decade card at the Joker undead, declaring as he slides it into the Decadriver. Henshin, Henshin, Kazuma shouts, tapping on the center of the belt. Flipping it over. Turn up. The two run forward as they start transforming. Kamen ride. Decade. The Decadriver announces as Tsukasa transforms once more into Decade while Kazuma runs through the holographic blue screen, transforming into Blade. The two riders engage the Joker undead with their swords at hand, slashing across him as sparks fly out. Damn pest! Joker Hajime shouts as he swings with his wrist blades, but both riders block and parry the attack before slashing him back. Joker is pushed back, now forced to fire long-range energy shots. Blade tries guarding as Decade dodges as he pulls out an attack ride card, dunking it into the card inserter of his belt. Attack ride. The Decadriver announces as Decade turns invisible. Invisible. Joker undead staggers as he's suddenly slashed by the invisible Decade, slashing him over and over. Blade joins in slashing the undead, but then the two are hit by energy shots, including the invisible Decade that became visible. He looks ahead to see the Paradoxa undead having done the deed. Your tricks end here, Decade. He declares with Decade taunting him with a point. Kamada, hoping you would show up so we can settle this. With your death. Devil. The undead responds as he joins in with Joker undead, both monsters fighting both riders evenly at first, but the monsters start to overpower them. You're all finished now, Joker Hajime proclaims, laughing. Blade gets annoyed at him clenching his free hand and declares determined. They're strong, but we can't give up. I don't want to be anyone's tool. I am my own rider. Suddenly 3 cards pop out from the ride booker. Decade catches them to show the blank cards becoming Blade theme cards. My thoughts exactly. Decade responds by holding onto the final form ride card, tapping it twice with his middle finger before sliding it into the Decadriver. Final form ride. The Decadriver declares as Decade pushes the handles forward and walks up to Blade's back. He tells him, reaching his hand onto his back. This is going to tickle a bit. Blade tries uttering, but Decade forces him to face forward. Come on. Decade then grabs his back as Blade gasps in awkwardness as he suddenly transforms into a larger version of his weapon, Blade Rouser. Blade. The Decadriver announces as Decade wields the massive weapon with both hands. This shocks both undead, with Joker uttering out, "What the?" Decade swings the massive sword and both undead were slashed by it, pushing them back in agony. Pulling and tapping the final attack ride card. Decade dunks it into the Decadriver as the belt announces. Final attack ride. Swinging the sword upward, massive current of electricity courses through the blade. Blade. The Decadriver declares while Decade swings the blade forward right at both monsters. The massive weapon connects the ground and unleashes a large electric shockwave, consuming both undead before exploding on impact. However, Joker manages to let Kamada take the majority as he screams being destroyed. The wave vanishes as Decade watches as Kamada emerges in human form, but the electricity is already destroying his body. He gazes at the rider, reaching out angrily for ruining everything. Decade, you will die. He utters out one final time before he explodes, vaporized completely. Decade watches the once human now undead's demise as he tosses the massive blade as it transforms back into blade, falling on his butt grunting and dazed. Decade changes back to Tsukasa, who scoffs a bit, bidding his farewell. Been nice knowing you, Kamada. Dragonic nods, tapping his hat. Blade grunts, changing back with Kazuma asking. Still very confused about what just happened. What did you do? Tsukasa turns and walks up to him. Kazuma blinks as Tsukasa stops in front of him and smiles, extending his hand to him. Kazuma slowly smiles, accepting his hand. Tsukasa pulls him up and tells him, go check on your friends. Pretty sure Yusuke may need help. Kazuma nods, heading off, but then he stops. Turning towards Tsukasa and begins to thank him. Tsukasa, cheese, chief, and you're welcome. Now get. Tsukasa immediately corrects him and orders him to go with a smirk. Kazuma just nods with a smile, heading off. Tsukasa sighs, putting his hands in his vest's pockets. Dragonic lands on his shoulder. Able to tell Tsukasa isn't glad he killed someone, but telling him that the man was evil would be pointless. Tsukasa already knows that. The part that the dragon knows is bothering him is that he is a destroyer, regardless of what he does. Dragonic adjusts his hat and then reminds the young man. We have a Joker to find before he gets away. Yay, we better go after him. Tsukasa agrees, not wanting that bastard to plot anything more greedy or stupid. Dragonic nods, hopping off his shoulder, flying as they head off. Tsukasa then chuckles, getting an idea, and says with a small smile. Like a hunt. Dragonic sweat drops, muttering out. If you say so. The two head out to find the Joker undead before he gets away. Joker Hajime limps as quickly as he couldn't, gasping in pain from that attack. Even though he took some of the attack, it could have killed him, and yet he still feels the pain. D-damn human. He curses out weakly, not believing he would lose after becoming this strong. It wasn't fair. He shouldn't have let that Decade be this close. To think such a man was this terrifying. I will not let them get away with this. Joker Hajime lets out a shrieking roar out of fury. The undead starts panting heavily, unaware someone is approaching. You look hurt. Joker Undead lifts his head up and turns to see over the hill is Daiki Kato, waving his hand at him pretty carefree. He breathes, leaning his head to the left, not recognizing him. For a Bugman undead, I mean. Daiki comments with a small smirk. The undead still didn't follow, and how did this human find him so quickly? Though while I have your attention, Kato slowly changes subject as he grins softly, pointing at him, and asks politely. I would like the chalice belt. Hand it over, no struggles please. Final warning. Joker breathes threateningly and snaps at this meatbag's nonsense. You think a mere human can harm me? Me? The undead yells furious as he fires a rapid fiery energy shot at him. Kato ducks but then blinks, feeling something off. He touched his head and his hat was gone. He turns and sees his hat is on the ground, being burned away by Joker's attack. Kato sighs as it was his favorite hat and now it's gone. He turns around gazing at Joker and begins to say, containing his anger. I suppose Tsukasa-san couldn't make you humble. Oh well. The undead watches and slowly gasps, taking a step back as Kato pulls and twirls a blue gun with yellow stripes and two-tip barrels. That was my favorite hat. I warned you. Kato proclaims, pulling out a rider card, showing it with an image and a name. Deaned. The Joker breathes, actually sounding terrified, demanding with a slightly frightened voice. What the hell are you? Kato forms a small smile, sliding the card into the card inserter in his gun, pushing it forward. He then responds, aiming the gun upward. A passing through Kamen Rider. No, Kamen Ride, the gun proclaims with the same voice like the Deca driver. The young man soon forms a sinister smirk, firing the shot upward as he calls forth. It'll only hurt for a moment. Henshin. He fires the trigger with the voice completing the transformation. Deaned. Hajime Joker only watches as the transformed unknown rider fires a blast, and all he sees was blue cyan colors consume him. Tsukasa and Dragonic search for Joker Hajime, both convinced the injuries of the last attack should have made it impossible for him to escape the area that quickly. For an undead, he's a cowardly runner. Tsukasa comments with Dragonic nodding. He shouldn't have gone that far. He must be close, Dragonic begins to say as he could feel something, but before he could finish himself, the Joker undead jumps in front of them but falls onto the ground in pain with blue-like flames consuming him. He screams in agony, reaching out to the two for help, screaming in horror. Help me! Help me! HHHEELLLLP. His words are cut off as he's consumed completely and becomes ashes. Dragonic stares astounded before speaking up rather happily. Never mind. He's dead. Tsukasa eyes him how uncaring who is he kidding? He also doesn't. If Joker Hajime died, he was a rich bastard. He walks up to the remains of the undead, checking them as they were just ashes now. Guess the final attack had a delay effect? Tsukasa theorizes, surprised his attack took so long to do its job. Dragonic checks on the ashes and thinks about it for a moment, realizing it couldn't be Tsukasa's doing. Single quote ellipsis. No, the dragon finally states, discovering what he wanted to check. Tsukasa raises an eyebrow, eyeing the dragon as Dragonic tells him. The chalice belt is gone. This puzzled Tsukasa, looking back at the ashes of Joker, suggesting, so someone took it after vaporizing him? Dragonic nods, pretty convinced about it. Who? Tsukasa asks with Dragonic frowning, just replying, not sure. Yet, and that's the concerning part that Dragonic thought. Joker undead is powerful in very right. He knew Tsukasa would beat him, but for anyone else, this person had to be on the same level if not stronger than the incomplete decade. There are only two other riders that could do this, but he didn't sense the true Kuga entering this world and the other. No, then the one who stole that item from Natsumi, could it be? Tsukasa decides to check up ahead and sees something from afar. He comes towards it and sees the burned remains of a hat, a very familiar hat. Tsukasa starts thinking, oddly thinking of that guy. Could he know? But he shouldn't be surprised if he crosses paths with him again. That Daiki Kato, what the hell is he? The two head back. Nothing much left to do after bidding farewell to Kazuma and leaving this world's future to him. Tsukasa and Dragonic drink up a warm cup of coffee as Yusuke is relieved this turned out well. At least Kazuma and this world will be okay, right? Natsumi asks, hoping nothing bad happens after they leave. Dragonic nods, agreeing, eating a rice ball happily. Tsukasa nods, certain he will. After all, he inherited his soul and has begun to evolve. That only makes him wonder as he holds on the Blade Rider card, thinking that he will evolve too. He will. So next world then? Tsukasa asks with a smirk as the dragon replies with a grin. Yup. He flies to the rope and pulls it down as the house shakes, teleporting to the next world. However, Daiki Kato watches from afar, smirking as his left hand is holding the chalice belt with one hand and even tossing it gently into the air before catching it. He then raises his right hand to the house as he moves his hand to form the gunfinger hand gesture. Tsukasa-san, I look forward to us truly meeting. Daiki begins to say. One eye shut like a sniper, the tip of his finger gun aiming at Tsukasa from the window. Don't get in my way though. He then moves his thumb down and pretends firing the finger handgun like an actual gun, all while forming a sinister smirk. Bang! End of part 7. Like and subscribe.